Hello everybody and welcome back to another C++ programming exercise video. And in today's video, we're going to be going over C++ programming exercise number 24. Now, C++ programming exercise number 24 says, write a program that randomly generates a 20 by 20 two-dimensional array board of type int. An element board I with index I and j is a peak, either a maximum or minimum, if all its neighbors, there should either be 3, 5, or 8 neighbors in any cell, are less than board I index j, or greater than board with I and index j. The program should output all elements in board with their indices, which are peak. It should also output if a peak is a maximum or a minimum. So, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have to fill in a couple of functions. So first, we're going to first declare some constants, some named constants. So first, we're going to write in constant int rows, and it's going to be all caps, which is equal to 20, and constant int columns. Now after that, you need to write in void fill board int b with columns in there. And you write semicolon void show board. And you write int b with columns right there. And after that, you write in void find peaks int b columns comma int rows. Okay, now after that, we can now move on to the main function. Now the main function is just going to be us executing the functions that we have up here. We also do need to declare board as an array first, and then you need to write in columns and rows right there, and then you can end it off with a semicolon, and then you can come here to fill board show board and then find peaks board comma rows. Okay, so now we need to get onto our first function. So let's just copy and paste that wall of text. and then paste it down here. Remove all of the semicolons, and then add the parentheses. After doing that, also make sure that you include cstd lib and ct time, so that we can randomly generate the numbers that we're going to be generating inside of our array. So make sure that you include both of these header files, and also make sure you include IOMAN-IP. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the time to 0 by using srand time 0. And now after that, this is all happening in Fillboard. After that, we can write in our for loop, our nested for loop. Int I is equal to 0. I is less than rows. I plus plus. For int j is equal to 0. J is less than columns. And j plus plus. B I and B J is equal to rand, and it's going to be a completely random number, really. We're not going to put any sort of restrictions on it. It's just going to be a completely random number. And also make sure you add these parentheses right there, those curly brackets. And then after all of this, you can see out and out. And the good thing is that this is a void function, so you do not need to return anything. Okay. Oh, and also make sure that right there, you also have cout and out. Because this for loop controls all of the elements printed out in a row. Okay. So now let's move on to the show board function. Now the first thing you want to do in this function is you want to write in for int I is equal to 0. I is less than rows. And I plus plus. And now you write in some curly brackets like that, and then you can write in for int j is equal to 0. J is less than columns. And j plus plus. And then right here, what you want to do is you want to write in cout set w 10 b I j. And there you go. And then we just cout and out. So there we have so all this does, this nested for loop right here, is all it does is it just prints out all of the elements onto the terminal. Oh wait, also remove this stuff right there. That does not need to be there. You can actually delete those curly brackets right there as well, because they're not needed. Okay, so anyways, we also need to write in cout and right there. After doing that, we are done with the showboard function, and now the last function that we need to do is the find peaks function, which is probably the most difficult function of here. So now the first thing that you need to do is declare a couple of variables in the beginning in order for you to be able to actually do this function. So first you need to write in int neighbor row position, int neighbor column position, and bool is max is equal to true, and bool is min is equal to true. Okay, so now that we're done with that, we need to execute a function, right? Now this function is going to be fairly long actually, but it shouldn't. But once you understand it, it shouldn't be too complicated. So all you need to do is the first thing you need to do to start this for loop is, because we're going to use a for loop, of course, you want to write in int I, which is equal to 0. I is less than rows, just standard stuff. And then you write in for int j is equal to 0. J is less than columns. J plus plus. And then after that, we can just do this. Now is max is going to be equal to true, and then is min is going to be equal to true. That's what we're going to start off with in the for loop. Let me just do that. Do this and this. Okay. So after you write in that, you can then come here and I'll write in for neighbor row position is equal to I minus 1 neighbor row position is less than or equal to I plus 1 and then you write in neighbor row position plus plus, and then this is going to be a nested this is going to be a nested for loop in here, by the way. For you can actually just copy and paste this. All you need to do is replace the neighbor row position with neighbor column position. Okay, so okay, so let me just do that. There we go. And now if neighbor row position is greater than or equal to 0, and let's see where the end, and neighbor row position is less than rows, and you can actually just copy and paste what's right here, and all you need to do is replace the neighbor row position with neighbor column position. And then we can just enter and then write in if exclamation mark if neighbor row position is not equal to I, and neighbor column position as not equal to J, then you enter, do that, and now you can write in if B I J is greater than B neighbor row position and neighbor column position is min is equal to false. And if you can just copy and paste this and just switch the signs actually and change the is max to is min is max and switch these signs, and there you have it. That is the end of this specific part of the nested for loop. So now let's get rid of any spaces. Okay, no, everything is nice and clumped right in the spaces where they should be. And let's get to actually printing out if something is a peak and if it is a minimum or maximum peak. So if is max is equal to true, then we write in cout B I J enter. Is a peak, and it is a maximum. Endo. And then we have in the next one, if, we'd also just copy and paste this right there. Paste. Is min is a peak, and it is a minimum. And there we have it. That is actually the end of our program. So let's see how it runs. There may be a couple of mistakes. Okay, let's pull up the error log. Rows was not declared in the scope. Rows expected something. Let's see, where is that? 68. Now let's try and run this again. And there we go. This ran perfectly well. Let me shrink that down a little bit so you all can see. Let me also shrink down this error log. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we have this. And it shows which ones are peaks and which ones are not. So you have all of these numbers here, completely randomly generated. And all in the rows. And it shows which ones are peaks and which ones are not. Okay. So first right here, I'm just going to go through a quick rundown of how this function find peaks works. So it starts off with us having isMax, and we set these to true by default, both in the beginning and in the beginning of the for loop. We set those to default because in the program we're actually going to set to false if they are not a peak. Because if it is not a peak, then it will be able to go through all of these for loops and then end up at this if statement where it will be set to false depending on what peak it is or isn't. And then it will come down here and print out if it is a peak or if it is a maximum peak or if it is a minimum peak or if it's just not a peak at all. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's get to the actual function. So here you see that we automatically set neighbor row position to I-1. The reason that we have neighbor row position set to I-1 and neighbor row position, we have it as while it is less than or equal to I+1. The reason that we have it set to I-1 in the beginning is so that we could check one in back of I, one that's like on the value of I, one that is one in front of I. So that is why we have it set to it like that. And that's why we have neighbor row position set like that, and neighbor column position set like that. So it could get the surrounding values, and that's how the for loop works. Oh, and inside of the for loop, we have the if statements. And these if statements says, the first one says, if neighbor row position is greater than or equal to 0, meaning that the position of the neighbor row is greater than or equal to 0. The position of the neighbor row that you're working with is greater than or equal to 0. And it is less than rows. And neighbor column position is greater than or equal to 0. And neighbor column position is less than 0. Is less than rows. Then we execute this if statement, which is if neighbor row position is equal to I and neighbor column position is equal to j. If these aren't true, then we go in here and we set if the neighbor row position, and we just change the is minimum and is max to false if b with index I and j is greater than b of neighbor row position and index neighbor column position, or b index I and j is less than b index neighbor row position and neighbor column position. And then at the end, after we calculate if that certain point or that certain index is a peak, then we say if it is, using these two cout statements. And also, we also ensure that this right here, that we never have an is minimum and an is maximum at the same time. So that's how. So that's why we have those two cout statements right on top of each other. So that's how this function works. Now, it may be a little bit confusing to most, and it really was when I first was going over this programming exercise. But eventually it will make sense and the gears will click in your head and you'll understand it. So just review it, and sometimes it may help to sort of model what exactly is going on here. And when you model it, that really helps you understand what exactly you're doing. So just do that if you're still confused. But aside from that, I hope you all had fun in this C++ program exercise, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later. Bye.